From VOA Learning English, this is the Agriculture Report. The town of Bor is about 450 kilometers west of Bangui, the capital of the Central African Republic. Thousands of people displaced by the violence in the country have come to the town seeking safety. VOA reporter Bagasi Kora recently spent 2 weeks in the Central African Republic. She reports that Christians displaced by the fighting are struggling to get enough to eat. But the country's food crisis affects more than just the people who have fled the violence. Many other people in Bor are hungry too and need food aid. Once a month, the United Nations World Food Program gives food to people in Bor. People line up to wait for the food. Tensions grow as the hours pass. African Union soldiers are on guard near the line. Madeleine Kim Mbusa was recently among those waiting for food. She and her 6 children fled their village a few weeks ago after Seleka rebels attacked. She said the Seleka killed all the rest of her family. She said that is why she came to Bor. A man in the line, Michel Sorobe, has 8 children. He has no money, no job, and no way to feed his family. After some time, Madeleine Kim Mbusa's wait has ended. A worker calls her name and she gets her food. She is given 50 kilograms of rice, 10 kilograms of beans, and 2 liters of cooking oil. However, before she leaves, people steal some of her aid. With the help of other women, Ms. Kim Mbusa finds the thieves and gets back her food. She returned home with all the aid she was given. And she said she hopes she would be able to feed her family for another month. For VOA Learning English, I'm Carolyn Presutti.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Agriculture Report. China has rejected more than 1 million metric tons of United States corn since last November. The Chinese government says it is not accepting shipments that include Agrasure Viptera, made by the seed company Syngenta. China says it has not approved importing this genetically modified or GMO kind of corn seed. A GMO food has had genes from other plants or animals added to its natural genetic content. America's National Grain and Feed Association says the Chinese decision is responsible for almost $3 billion in losses to the U.S. agriculture industry. Wendell Shaman is a farmer in the central state of Illinois. He also is a past leader of the U.S. Grains Council. He has traveled to China to represent American farmers. Mr. Shaman says demand for American corn used to feed animals is up throughout the world, except in China. He says that country has a very large market for it, but American sales there have dropped to almost nothing. He says GMOs increase the size and quality of harvests at lower cost to farmers. And he says some help the environment because they limit the kinds of pest control needed. Craig Turner is a contributing editor for the online publication grainanalyst.com. He says corn prices dropped when news first spread of the Chinese rejection. He says corn was trading at about $4.20 a bushel at that time. Chinese restrictions have continued, but corn prices have since gone up again. Still, Wendell Shaman says the situation caused mistrust of GMO farmers and grain companies that accept GMO crops. For VOA Learning English, I'm Alex Villarreal.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Health Report. Electronic cigarettes have been advertised as a safer choice for smokers than tobacco. E-cigarettes contain the drug nicotine, just like traditional cigarettes. But they do not use tobacco, and you do not light them. They operate on battery power. Recently, poison control centers across the United States have reported an increase in telephone calls about e-cigarette poisoning. Most of the phone calls are from people worried about children who played with the devices. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says it received 215 calls about e-cigarette concerns last February. More than half were about children ages 5 and younger. The devices apparently had made them sick. Tim McAfee is director of the CDC's Office on Smoking and Health. He says the federal government does not control e-cigarettes, yet he confirms they contain liquid nicotine, a well-known danger. Mr. McAfee adds that the most common way an individual gets poisoned by nicotine is when it gets onto the skin, in their eyes, or is swallowed. Even a small amount, he says, can make a person sick. Nicotine poisoning can cause stomach pain and a feeling of unbalance. Headaches and seizures are also signs of nicotine poisoning. Too much nicotine can kill. E-cigarettes do not contain hundreds of harmful chemicals found in cigarettes. So the U.S. Surgeon General has suggested that e-cigarettes may be a useful tool for adults trying to end their tobacco dependency. But Tim McAfee worries that young people may think electronic cigarettes are harmless. They could become addicted and then start smoking real cigarettes. For VOA Learning English, I'm Carolyn Presutti. From VOA Learning English, this is the Economics Report. Small markets are an important part of South Africa's economy. These businesses offer jobs in a country with an unemployment rate of at least 25%. But immigrants and international businesses are setting up competing stores. That has hurt local traders who run little shops called spazas. John Stiholi has owned his spaza for more than 10 years. It is a small gray building in the Soweto area of the capital, Johannesburg. His small store offers many different kinds of goods, from soap to sweets. Spaza means just getting by. The shops are found in non-white communities where larger, more official stores are not available or are too costly. There are about 100,000 spazas in South Africa. They employ 290,000 people. Research shows that what is called the informal sector in Africa is very large. Informal workers can be self-employed or wage earners. Last year, the African Development Bank said the informal sector provides about 55% of the economic productivity of sub-Saharan Africa. But business has been slow for Mr. Stiholi. He is competing with a nearby store run by a family from Pakistan. South Africa is the only country in the area where refugees have the right to work and can move freely. But reduced profits for native traders and high unemployment rates have caused tensions in the country. In September, more than 100 Somali-owned spazas were attacked during unrest in the city of Port Elizabeth. Rose Nkosi is president of the South African Spaza and Tuck Shop Association. She says the businesses offer the community credit and 24-hour service. The competitors do not. For VOA Learning English, I'm Carolyn Presutti.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Education Report. Growing up can be hard in poor neighborhoods where crime is common. That is the situation Marco Antonio Aguilar faced when he started at Garfield High School in Los Angeles, California. The boy hated school. He says he had the wrong friends, often missed classes, and even got into fights. The school suspended him, barring him from attending classes. He almost was sent to a school for problem students. But Marco Antonio changed his behavior. He says a talk with his mother helped him change. And he praises his teachers for the help they provided. But now, students at Garfield High no longer receive suspensions. The punishment itself has been suspended. Jose Huerta, the Garfield High principal, took the action when he first arrived at Garfield more than 4 years ago. Back then, more than half the students were leaving school without finishing their studies. At the same time, Garfield was suspending nearly 700 students yearly. But Mr. Huerta had other ideas about how to deal with young people who misbehave. He said most of the suspensions were for behavior known as willful defiance. He said that could include something as minor as chewing gum in class. Under Mr. Huerta's leadership, students involved in willful defiance first talk to a teacher. Then a parent may get involved. Finally, group support can be provided. Today, Garfield graduates 85% of its students. And last year, the Los Angeles Unified School District changed its punishment policy. The whole district banned suspension to punish students for willful defiance. For VOA Learning English, I'm Alex Villarreal.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Education Report. 60 years ago, the highest court in the United States changed American education. On May 17, 1954, all 9 judges of the Supreme Court ruled against racial separation in public schools. The court said such segregation in schools violates the United States Constitution. At that time, many school systems had separate schools for white students and black students. The segregation was the result of a court ruling from 1896. That decision permitted so-called separate but equal schools. Some schools had only white children. Others had only black children. Then, about 60 years later, the case Brown versus the Board of Education came before the Supreme Court. It involved 5 separate legal actions, but it centered on an African American child in Kansas. Linda Brown lived just a short distance from a school, but she was forced to travel across town to a black school because the school near her permitted only white students. Aderson Francois teaches law at Howard University in Washington, D.C. He says the case ended official racial separation in U.S. schools. But he also criticizes the ruling. He says it should have set a time by which segregation had to end. Some segregated schools did not obey the Supreme Court ruling until the 1960s. Even today, many schools are still effectively segregated. In 2012, the Civil Rights Project at the University of California studied racial populations in schools. The study showed that many schools are less racially mixed than 40 years ago. The study says social and economic issues are partly to blame. For VOA Learning English, I'm Carolyn Presutti.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Technology Report. The robot that can clean your house and cook your food may still be a long way off, but robots that can replace humans for work in dangerous environments are closer to becoming a reality. Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, is one of the leading robotics engineering schools. Scientists there are designing highly developed robots to do uninteresting, dirty, and dangerous jobs. One such robot looks like a snake. The snake robot's 16 joints permit it to pass through narrow spaces like underground pipes in nuclear centers. The robot looks for leaks and other damage. Howie Choset is the leader of the snake robot design team at Carnegie Mellon. Professor Chozet says there are a lot of places humans cannot reach. He says being able to do so with a robot could have a powerful effect on society. The 2011 disaster at the Fukushima nuclear power plant in Japan made clear the need for robots. Robots can work safely in high radiation areas. Another robot, Chimp, can easily move through any disaster area. Chimp's powerful hands can turn on and off controls and carry out similar jobs. One group at Carnegie Mellon University is developing a robot to perform common jobs. For example, they hope to create a new robot that can carry and deliver things in a hospital or office building. Researchers often make robots play games. These games are designed to teach robots complex tasks. Scientists hope that someday robots of equal intelligence will be programmed to work together. For VOA Learning English, I'm Alex Villarreal. From VOA Learning English, this is the Health Report. A man enters a store to buy milk. He walks out of the store with milk. That is all, milk. At the same time, a woman enters the same grocery store to buy milk. She buys it, but she also buys chicken and lemons to make dinner that night. And she gets some wine for a party later that week. Then she remembers to buy a card for a friend, coffee for the morning, and some cleaning supplies. That is the difference between the female and male brain, simply explained in a grocery store. Generally speaking, men do one thing at a time. Women do several things at the same time. Now, some brain research supports this theory. Scientists at the University of Pennsylvania studied brain images of 949 people from 8 to 22 years old. They found that male brains have more connections on one side of the brain or hemisphere. In the female brain, they found more connections between the right and left hemispheres. The left side of the brain is known as the side of reason. The right hemisphere is known as the creative side. Regina Verma is a professor at the University of Pennsylvania. She co-wrote the study. She says when women are asked to do something difficult, they are likely to use both the reasoning and the creative side. Men, she adds, generally use one or the other. As a result, men generally deal directly with a problem. Women are more likely to take a less direct path to find a solution. But Dr. Verma says the study shows generalities. She says it should not lead anyone to expect some behaviors from women and others from men. For VOA Learning English, I'm Alex Villarreal.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Technology Report. East Africa is a growing technology center. The area creates award-winning applications for wireless or mobile devices at a fast rate. The newly established companies there are full of imagination. What they lack are females. One group in Uganda is working to guarantee that women are not left behind in the technology industry. Christine Ampere is a 23-year-old computer programming engineer in Uganda. She says girls in Uganda are pressured from an early age to study what many consider to be easy subjects. She says that parents and teachers often think math and science are too difficult for girls. Ms. Ampere co-established Girl Geek Kampala 2 years ago. The group teaches women the skills they need to make profitable applications and websites. They also bring in female technology leaders to speak to the students and serve as models of success in business. Girl Geek courses are free. They are held in facilities donated by a technology company. Christine Ampere estimates that they have trained around 150 women so far. Similar programs have been created in Kenya and South Africa. Ms. Ampere says in years past, she would know every one of the women at technology events she attended across Africa. Now, the computer programmer says she sees more and more new faces. She says the gender imbalance remains high, but the difference is clear to see. Ms. Ampere believes that for Ugandan women to truly succeed in technologies, they need to create openings for themselves. She says no one else is going to do that. For VOA Learning English, I'm Carolyn Presutti.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Economics Report. The head of the U.S. Central Bank has told Congress that the economy is improving after very slow growth in the first 3 months of the year. U.S. Federal Reserve Chair Janet Yellen's report came soon after the government announced April's employment numbers. They showed the biggest monthly gain in 2 years. Ms. Yellen's comments were hopeful. She said she expects economic activity to expand at a faster rate this year than it did last year. However, the central bank chief remained concerned about employment and international tensions. She said the threat of conflict in other countries and growing financial problems in some developing countries could hurt the world economy. The Federal Reserve, or Fed for short, has been cutting back its efforts to support the economy. The Fed has reduced its government bond buying activities. Fed purchases went from $85 billion 5 months ago to about $45 billion now. Bond buying by the central bank puts more money into the economy, and it has helped keep interest rates near historically low levels. This program, called quantitative easing, is set to end in the last 3 months of this year. But Janet Yellen said borrowing rates would remain low for, in her words, a considerable amount of time. Earlier, the U.S. Labor Department said the economy added 288,000 jobs in April. That brought the unemployment rate to its lowest level in 5 years. The employment news balanced the Commerce Department's announcement that economic growth was very slow in the first 3 months of the year. For VOA Learning English, I'm Alex Villarreal.